Hello everybody and welcome back to The Lost Planeswalker. You're here with me, Jesse, the Lost Planeswalker, and today we're talking about Niko, Light of Hope, a very interesting commander in the Azorius colors that's going to want you to create copies of creatures based on the number of shard tokens you make. You've never heard of a shard token before? Don't worry, I'm going to go through it here when we read Niko. So, Niko, Light of Hope. When Niko, Light of Hope enters, create 2 shard tokens. They're enchantments with 2, sack this enchantment, scry 1, then draw a card. Very interesting enchantment type that we haven't gotten any new of, except now. You know, we only had 1 card that ever made it before, which was Niko, and now we're getting the second one here. 2, tap, exile target non-legendary creature you control, shards you control become copies of it until the beginning of the next end step. Return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So Niko here is all about making as many shards as possible. So this is going to focus a lot around a blink deck. Think Brago, pretty much anything we want, but it's just going to be mainly focused around Niko because we want to make as many shards as possible to then copy some really good creatures to either swing in with evasion or give us some really powerful abilities. So the way that this deck is going to be designed is looking at as many ways we can make shards, especially looking at exile in return. We're going to be looking at great copy triggers and cards that are really going to care about having multiple copies of them. And then, of course, we have the good stuff. But I would just like to thank Erica, the Lost Planeswalker, for being one of my first patrons on my Patreon channel. If you haven't checked that out, I'll talk about it more later. But thank you, Erica. You mean the world to me. Now let's dive right in and check out how this deck is going to work.
Let's dive right in and look at all of those Niko triggers and how we can do that and get as many shards on the board as possible. First off, I want to talk about powerful shard creation with Niko Eris, Panharmonicon, and Venser the Sojourner. Niko Eris, X, white, blue, blue, legendary planeswalker Niko. When Niko Eris enters the battlefield, create X shard tokens. So this is one of the easiest ways, and the only other card in this deck that actually allows you to create shards, or I should say printed, other than the new Niko Light of Hope. But for +1, up to 1 target creature control can't be blocked this turn, and whenever that creature deals combat damage this turn, return it to its owner's hand. -1, Niko Eris deals 2 damage to target tapped creature for each card you've drawn this turn, and also -1, create a shard token. So there's some really cool upside we can get with Niko here, but we really just want to create shards with her. Panharmonicon obviously is a great one, giving us double triggers whenever Niko enters, creating additional shard tokens. And then Venser the Sojourner, 3 white and a blue planeswalker Venser, +2, exile target permanent you own, return to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step, allowing us to blink Niko or some of our other permanents. -1, creatures are unblockable this turn, which seems very good, allowing us to end the game very easily. And then -8, you get an emblem with whenever you cast a spell, exile target permanent. If we can get it up to -8, we're almost unstoppable, bouncing Niko and casting some of our spells, allowing us to just clear the board. One of the things that comes with blinking a commander that you have an activated ability for is being to also attack with it or tap it in this case. So some things that are going to give our commander haste are Chroma's Memorial, Charity of Victory, and Lava Spur Boots. Now, Chroma's Memorial here, I want to point out, it's a very big and expensive card, but it is going to be able to kind of end the game. So it's a cool card to add for that reason, but if you're looking for other cheap haste triggers that isn't $40, I would just get rid of this. But Chroma's Memorial says creatures you control have flying, first strike, vigilance, trample, haste, and protection from black to red. This is a great way to buff up our entire board. Whenever we choose whatever we're going to make a bunch of, they're all going to get that effect and potentially just trundle in to win the game there. Chariot of Victory is a great equipment that only equips for 1, which I really like because it's very cheap, but it gives a creature first strike, trample, and haste. And very similarly, Lava Spur Boots, single, mana to cast, artifact equipment, a creature gets +1/+0, has haste and ward, and only equips for 1. Talking about cheap things, what are some cheap ways we can exile and return our commander? We have Cloud Shift, Ephemerate, and Splash Portal. Cloud Shift for a single white instant lets us exile target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under your control. Ephemerate very similarly lets us exile target creature control, then return to the battlefield under its owner's control, and it has rebound, meaning that at the beginning of your next upkeep, you may cast this card from exile without paying its mana cost. And then Splash Portal is a new one from Bloomburrow that is a single blue sorcery, exile target creature you control, then return to the battlefield under its owner's control. And if it happens to be a bird, frog, otter, or rat, you draw a card. In this case, we just want a cheap exile and return card. And to be able to guarantee we get some triggers at the end of our turn, we have Conjurer's Closet, Soul Herder, and Teleportation Circle. Basically, all three of these cards say at the beginning of your end step, you may exile target Nico, because that's what we really care about, and then return it to the battlefield, allowing us to get additional shard triggers at the end of our turn. Soul Herder here has the additional benefit that whenever a creature is exiled from the battlefield, we put a +1 counter on Soul Herder, making it even more powerful every time we exile something. Some other additional ways to exile Nico to create as many shards as possible is Charming Prince, Crashing Drawbridge, Flicker Wisp, Ghostly Flicker, Irenicus's Vile Duplication, Lightning Greaves, Minor Refractor, Momentary Blink, Parting Gust, Restoration Angel, and Swiftfoot Boots.
Now, before we dive back in and see what kind of creatures we want to make lots of copies of, I would just like to say please consider leaving a like and subscribing. It would mean the world to me. In addition, if you want to be like Erica and support me, I just created a Patreon and it would mean the world to me. You can follow me there for free, or if you like the content and want to support me financially, I would super appreciate it. Erica is a part of the Lost Planeswalker tier, and that means she gets called out at the beginning of my videos and then is also included in the credits. So thank you again, Erica. Now let's dive right back in and check out those great copy triggers and creatures we have.
Now, let's look over some great copy targets that we want our shards to be. And we have some really big cards that can do several different things. First off, I want to focus around big triggers. So basically, taking advantage of having a multitude of these creatures in order to interact with the board. Cards like Amiria, Shepherd, Junkwinder, and Sludge Monster are those. Amiria Shepherd is 5 white, creature angel with flying, and landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may return target non-land permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. A great way to return a lot of stuff to our hands, but if it's a plains, you may return that non-land permanent card to the battlefield instead. This is a staple card in my angel deck, and people just don't understand how powerful this is when it enters, because allowing for us to bring things back to the battlefield is extremely easy to do if you're playing a lot of plains. And in this case, if we can create 3 or 4 of these at a time, whenever one plains enters, we basically reanimate 4 things for free, which is a incredibly powerful effect, and I think is an awesome underrated card. Junkwinder, of course, affinity for tokens, meaning we can cast this for a very cheap, but whenever a token enters a battlefield under control, we can tap target non-land permanent and opponent controls, and it doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. Just having one of these out there and having Nico enter with 2 tokens means that it's going to tap down 2 creatures. I think if we have a board of these, we're going to tap down the entire board, nothing untaps, and we can probably perpetually do this until this is removed. And then Sludge Monster, very cool creature that says whenever it enters or attacks, put a slime counter on up to 1 target creature. Non-horror creatures with slime counters on them lose all abilities and have base power and toughness 2/2. Copying this and swinging out, we can basically nullify an opponent's entire board, drastically changing the entire course of the game. So I think Sludge Monster is a very cool card and works particularly well when you can have a ton of them very easily. So that is awesome. Now I want to look at some big hitters that are really gonna benefit from us having a ton of them. Ancient Gold Dragon, Bronze Guardian, and Stormtide Leviathan are those. Ancient Gold Dragon is 5 white, creature Elder Dragon with flying, and whenever it deals combat damage, you roll a d20, and you create a 1/1 Blue Fairy Dragon creature token with flying for the result. Activating this trigger once is good. Activating this trigger more than once is insanely powerful. Not only are you getting a ton of flyers, you get a ton of creature tokens that will stick around, and most of the times, if you can get through just once, if you didn't end the game, you're going to end the game on the next turn. Bronze Guardian, also a devastating threat, because this artifact creature golem has double strike, ward 2. Other artifacts you control have ward 2, and its power is equal to the number of artifacts you control. If we turn our board of shards into this, then we're already going to have a ton of other artifact creatures on the board. Its power is going to become insane. And then if you try to remove it, all of the other copies of Bronze Guardian are going to stack and give you a ward so expensive that unless you can generate an infinite number of mana, there's really no reliable way you're going to be able to pay it. And then Stormtide Leviathan. This is a great closer card that costs 5 blue with Island Walk. All lands are islands in addition to their other types, and creatures without flying or Island Walk can't attack. Not only is it going to make it so your opponents can't block it, but if we create multiple of these, we're going to very easily be able to knock whoever we want out of the game. game. So I think this is a very, very cool card, and I would love to play it. Some other great copy targets we have here is Aerial Extortionist, Archangel of Thune, Firemain Commando, Kappa Cannoneer, Moonshaker Cavalry, Nesting Dovehawk, Overlord of the Mistmoors, Silverwing Squadron, Spark Double, Sun Titan, Triplicate Titan, and Worm Coil Engine. Lastly here, we have some good stuff, and these are just some great cards I think help round out the deck. We have Claim Jumper, Enduring Curiosity, and 1000-Year Elixir. Claim Jumper here is a great ramp creature that came out of the Outlaws of Thunder Junction, but for 2 and a white creature, Rapid Mercenary with Vigilance. When it enters battlefield, if an opponent controls more lands than you may search your library for a Plains card and put it on the battlefield. Tapped. Then if an opponent controls more lands than you, repeat this process once. If you search your library this way, shuffle. So not only can we ramp once, but we can ramp twice if we're really behind. Enduring Curiosity is 2 blue enchantment creature Cat Glimmer with Flash. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. And then whenever it dies, if it was a creature, we get to return it as an enchantment. And 1000-Year Elixir, a very good card. In decks, we want to activate abilities the turn they come down. You may activate abilities of creatures you control as though those creatures had haste, and you can pay 1 to tap to untap target creature. In this case, we just want that static text on the card. We're not really worried about untapping Nico here, but it's a very cool ability still. The other good stuff cards in this deck are Arcane Signet, Bident of Thassa, Brainstorm, Commander Sphere, Dawn's Truce, Dourport Mage, Dovin's Veto, Lauren of the Third Path, Muldrifter, Path to Exile, Rootborn Defense, Shard Mage's Rescue, Soul Ring, Soldiers of Plowshares, Time Warp, Unwanted Remake, Wake the Reflection, Windfall, and Wrath of Gods. As always, the land base is up to you. This deck isn't too mana pip hungry. We do have some larger creatures that do require multiple pips of the same color, and having those lands that tap for multiple colors of mana are going to be pretty essential in this deck.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope that Nico Light of Hope was a really fun deck, and you thought so as well. There was a really interesting thing that I learned about this deck when I was listening to some of the Magic lore about, the cards of this set in general, and that Nico is the only card in this set that has any sunlight in it, and that was very specific, and I thought that was a really cool, interesting point, and just some fun knowledge that maybe you could tell some of your friends about. But comment down below, what kind of cards or are you adding or cutting from this deck? Do you agree with what I did? Are there some other play styles or creatures that you would think work way better in this deck? Please let me know in the comments down below. I would really appreciate it. In addition, if you'd please leave a like, share this video with a friend, and subscribe, that would mean the world to me. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Now today's Scryfall card of the day is Crackling Perimeter. As the path he sought came into focus, Niv Mizzet took steps to prevent others from approaching it. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you later, Planeswalkers.